Breaking news! The Dolphins just made some moves that have fans excited, but not necessarily in a good way. Things are heating up behind the scenes in Miami, and I have some important things to talk about. We all know the Dolphins are trying to make it to the long-awaited Super Bowl, and to do that, Mike McDaniel is going to need a roster that's ready for January football. Unfortunately, Chris Grier is still around. Yeah, I know, he should have been fired by now, but here we are. I'll have the full story soon, but before we get into that, be sure to like this post, but only if you're a true Miami Dolphins fan. And hey, if you've been with this team for over 20 years, leave a comment saying, "Go Dolphins." My love is unconditional. Now let's talk about the newest names added to and cut from the Dolphins roster. The most recent move came as Miami claimed defensive lineman Matthew Butler off waivers, releasing undrafted rookie Trayvon Rubka out of Kentucky in the process. Butler, formerly with the Las Vegas Raiders, is no big-time addition. Let's be honest, the guy played only 15 games across 3 seasons. This isn't the type of move that's going to push Miami closer to a Lombardi trophy. Best case, he's just a camp body to fill out drills. It's a minor transaction, but it's indicative of the larger problem. We're swapping out potential young talent for veterans with little production history. Speaking of questionable signings, let's talk about Kendall Sheffield. The Dolphins signed him to the offseason 90-man roster after a tryout during rookie minicamp. Sheffield is a 28-year-old former 4th-round pick who hasn't started a game since 2020 and logged only 167 defensive snaps over the last 3 years, all last season with the Jets. He's been around, sure, Falcons, 49ers, Titans, Jets, and now Miami. But let's keep it real, this isn't the kind of signing that gets fans excited or boosts this defense. Sheffield has been targeted often in coverage and gave up a nearly 70% completion rate with a QB rating of 105.9 when targeted. That's rough. And here's where things start to get even more frustrating. Miami's cornerback room is thin. Jalen Ramsey trade rumors continue to swirl, and the reality is this: Ramsey is likely gone after June 1st to minimize the dead cap hit. If that happens, Cam Smith becomes CB2 by default, and Kader Kohou, who's more of a nickel corner, becomes the team's top cornerback. That's not the setup of a Super Bowl contending defense. Signing Sheffield isn't a solution. It's a band-aid on a bullet wound. Miami needs to go out and get 2 real veteran corners. Period. And guess who turned them down? Rasul Douglas. He visited the Dolphins, even got a contract offer. But Barry Jackson reports the offer wasn't up to par for Douglas. So now he's headed to Seattle. Another missed opportunity by the front office. Grier strikes again. Let's not forget the long snapper saga either. It's wild how much we've talked about long snappers in the past week. First, Blake Ferguson was released. Then they brought in UDFA Nelson Hibbett, only to cut him days later after signing Joe Cardona, a former New England Patriot and 2-time Super Bowl champ. Cardona brings leadership, sure, and he's likely a better option than Ferguson. But again, this is a long snapper we're talking about. Important? Yes. Impactful on a grand scale? Not really. The real issue is Miami continues to shuffle the bottom of the roster without addressing the gaping holes at key positions like cornerback. Let's talk about that international game now because it's a big one. The Dolphins will be heading to Spain, yes, Madrid, in Week 11 to face the Washington Commanders and rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels. This is the first ever NFL game in Spain, and while it sounds cool, Dolphins fans should be mad. Why? Because it's technically a home game for Miami. That means the Dolphins only get 8 true home games in 2025, 1 neutral site, 8 on the road. In a year where every win counts, losing that Hard Rock Stadium advantage could come back to haunt them. The game kicks off at 9:30 a.m. Eastern on November 16th, and history suggests that teams playing overseas usually get a bye the following week to recover from the travel and jet lag. So, expect a Week 12 bye for the Dolphins, not confirmed yet, but very likely. And for those curious, average temps in Madrid mid-November hover around 58 degrees during the day, with lows dipping to 41. So it won't be Miami heat, but it won't be freezing either. Still, this could be a trap game for the Dolphins, especially if they're not mentally locked in after a brutal travel schedule. Now here's a little tidbit. Miami brought in several UDFAs to bolster that weak cornerback room during rookie minicamp, including B.J. Adams and Ethan Robinson. They also drafted Jason Marshall Jr. in the 5th round. But let's be honest, none of these guys are plug-and-play corners right now. They need development, and they're likely not the ones you want on the field when the playoffs are on the line. This cornerback unit needs veteran help, and Kendall Sheffield isn't the answer. He's just another name on the list. The reality is this: if the Dolphins want to compete, the front office has to stop playing it safe with these low-risk, low-reward signings. This is supposed to be a Super Bowl window. The roster needs aggressive moves, not bargain bin pickups. Chris Grier's conservative approach to building this secondary is already showing cracks, and if something doesn't change fast, it could be the downfall of this team's postseason hopes. So what do you think, Dolphins fans? Is Kendall Sheffield just another camp body, or do you see something more in this move? And how do you feel about losing a home game to play overseas in Madrid? And here's where things get even more frustrating for Dolphins fans. Because when you look at the moves this team is making, it becomes clear that there's no urgency from Chris Grier to fix what's obviously broken. It's like he's playing roster Jenga, pulling out foundational pieces and replacing them with guys who haven't been consistent contributors in years. And now, with Jalen Ramsey likely heading out after June 1st, the Dolphins are staring down the barrel of a secondary that is, at best, average, and at worst, completely overmatched against AFC elite offenses. Cam Smith, a player who barely saw the field in 2023, is suddenly being positioned as a starting outside corner. This isn't development, it's desperation. And Kader Kohou, for all his versatility and toughness, is being overextended as the lead guy in the slot and potentially even outside depending on how this depth chart shakes out. It's an unstable situation that could implode early if Miami doesn't make a splash signing or swing a meaningful trade. The front office had a chance with Rasul Douglas. They brought him in, showed him the facility, made a pitch. And what happened? He left without a deal, and now he's visiting Seattle. Think about that, a veteran corner who has produced at a high level in recent years, who fits the scheme, and who could have brought instant leadership to a questionable unit, walked out the door because the offer wasn't serious. That's not just a missed opportunity, it's malpractice. Then we get into the long snapper shuffle, again, not something that normally gets headlines, but it shows how disjointed this roster building has been. First you cut Blake Ferguson, then you sign an undrafted free agent in Nelson Hibbett, and before you even give him a chance to compete, you sign Joe Cardona and show Hibbett the door. That's 3 moves at one of the most stable positions in football, and for what? To make a marginal upgrade at long snapper while ignoring glaring holes at cornerback, defensive line depth, and potentially even wide receiver depth if an injury hits? Cardona, to his credit, brings something this team badly needs: championship pedigree and locker room presence. Coming from the Patriots dynasty and being a 2-time Super Bowl champ, he knows what it takes to win. But we're talking about a long snapper here. That's not going to carry your team when you're facing Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, or Patrick Mahomes in January. It's a minor win when the franchise needs major changes. Let's pivot to that Madrid game once more, because while the NFL is patting itself on the back for expanding the brand overseas, the Dolphins are taking the hit. Losing a home game in a season where they need every edge possible could cost them big. Hard Rock Stadium has become one of the more underrated home field advantages in the league. The heat, the crowd, the comfort, all of that disappears when you hop on a transatlantic flight to face a feisty young QB like Jaden Daniels, who's going to be playing with nothing to lose. And with this being a neutral site game, you have to wonder, why wasn't a game against a non-conference opponent like Arizona or Chicago chosen instead? Why a matchup that could have playoff implications down the stretch? It's another questionable decision from a league perspective, but one that the Dolphins didn't push back against. Maybe because Grier and company thought it would be good exposure. Maybe because the league told them they had no choice. Either way, the fans lose out.